Low-code tools promise speed, and at first they deliver. But then something happens. The app grows, requirements change, costs rise, and suddenly progress slows to a crawl. If you've ever wondered why that happens, this conversation will sound very familiar. In this video, we'll break down when low-code tools make sense, when they don't, and why development in Visual Studio often delivers the same speed, without the hidden limits. Low-code and no-code platforms did not appear by accident. They emerged to solve a very real business problem. Demand for applications was growing faster than development teams could keep up. Departments needed tools, workflows, dashboards, and automation, and they needed them quickly. Low-code tools stepped in by reducing friction. They replaced syntax with visual components, logic blocks, and pre-built connectors. For organizations without trained developers, this was a breakthrough. Suddenly, non-technical users could create simple applications without waiting months for IT backlogs to clear. That initial speed is real, and it's important to acknowledge that. But the key insight is this: low-code platforms optimize for first application success, not long-term application growth. They are designed to help someone build their first app, not to support an evolving system over years. This distinction changes everything. Most business applications don't stay small. What begins as a simple form or workflow quickly becomes business critical. Data grows, rules evolve, integrations multiply. Auditing, security, logging, and compliance enter the picture. At that point, the very abstractions that made low-code appealing begin to work against you. Custom logic becomes harder. Performance tuning becomes opaque. Costs become unpredictable. This is not a failure of the platform. It is a mismatch between tool design and application lifecycle. Low-code tools are optimized for speed when skills are limited. Visual Studio, by contrast, is optimized for speed after training. Understanding that difference is the foundation for making better architectural decisions, not just faster ones. Most business leaders describe their needs the same way. We just need a simple app. But when you strip away the labels, simple applications follow a very consistent pattern. They collect data, they validate input, they apply a few business rules, they store information, they display results. That's it. There is nothing inherently complex about this. These applications are mostly glue code, straightforward logic that connects inputs, rules, and outputs. And this matters because Visual Studio excels at exactly this type of work. With modern .NET project templates, scaffolding a working application takes minutes. IntelliSense guides the developer through available options. Strong typing prevents entire classes of errors before the application ever runs. In other words, Visual Studio does not slow down simple development. It accelerates it once the fundamentals are understood. Low-code platforms often give the impression that code itself is the barrier. In reality, the barrier is unfamiliarity. Once a developer is trained, writing straightforward application logic is not meaningfully slower than dragging components onto a canvas. The difference is that code remains transparent, logic is visible, behavior is explicit, and nothing is hidden behind vendor abstractions. When people say low code is faster, what they often mean is faster for someone who has not been trained. That is a valid advantage, but it is not the whole story. A balanced conversation requires honesty. There are scenarios where low-code and no-code tools are the right choice. If an application is short-lived, experimental, or strictly internal, low-code can deliver value quickly. Prototypes, departmental workflows, and one-off reporting tools often fall into this category. In these cases, long-term maintainability is not the priority. Speed is. Low-code tools also shine in environments with no development capacity. If there is no access to trained developers, empowering business users may be the only viable option. And that is not a failure. It is a pragmatic decision. The problem arises when organizations quietly cross a line. A prototype becomes permanent. A temporary workflow becomes mission critical. A small app becomes deeply embedded in daily operations. Low-code tools were not designed for that transition. Visual Studio, by contrast, does not require a rewrite when expectations increase. The same application structure supports simple use cases on day one and complex requirements years later. The takeaway is not that low-code is bad. It's that low-code works best when its limitations are acknowledged up front before the application outgrows the platform. One of the most persistent myths in software development is that writing code is inherently slow. That may be true for beginners, but it is not true for trained developers. Visual Studio provides scaffolding, templates, and automation that eliminate repetitive setup. Common patterns are reused. Familiar structures are copied forward. Once someone has built 10 applications, the 11th comes together very quickly. IntelliSense removes guesswork. Compile time validation prevents errors. Debugging tools shorten feedback loops. The developer spends less time fighting the tool and more expressing intent. At that point, speed differences largely disappear. Low-code platforms front-load speed by hiding complexity. Visual Studio front-loads learning, then repays that investment repeatedly. This is why experienced teams often move faster with code than without it. The critical insight is that low-code saves time by avoiding training. Visual Studio saves time by leveraging it. Organizations must decide which trade-off they are willing to make, and for how long. Low-code platforms rarely fail loudly. Instead, they fail quietly, by slowing down. Customization becomes harder. Performance tuning becomes limited. Licensing costs increase with usage. Integrations hit artificial walls. None of this is visible at the start. This is why many organizations feel trapped. The application works, but evolving it feels expensive, risky, or impossible. Low-code platforms don't break. They run out of road. Visual Studio does not impose these ceilings. Developers can add logging, auditing, testing, security controls, and performance optimizations incrementally without changing platforms. The same codebase grows naturally with the business. This is the difference between tools optimized for creation and tools optimized for ownership. Professional software is more than features. It includes logging, monitoring, testing, version control, security reviews, and deployment automation. Visual Studio integrates directly with these practices. Git workflows, automated builds, static analysis, and continuous integration are not add-ons. They are first-class citizens. This matters as applications mature. Low-code platforms often treat these concerns as secondary. When they are needed, they are bolted on, if they are supported at all. Professional systems require professional tooling. Visual Studio supports the full life cycle of an application, from the simplest prototype to regulated, audited production systems. That continuity is difficult to replicate with low-code tools. The real question is not low-code versus Visual Studio. The real question is longevity. How long will this application live? How critical will it become? How often will it change? These answers determine the right tool. Short-term disposable solutions favor low-code. Long-term evolving systems favor Visual Studio. There is no universal winner, only better informed decisions. Organizations that understand this avoid rewrites, reduce risk, and build systems that grow with them instead of against them. Low-code tools help you start fast. Visual Studio helps you finish strong. As applications grow, the ability to evolve them matters more than initial speed. If this perspective resonates, explore more of my work on building practical, scalable systems. Thanks for watching.